Trucks are naturally heavy. It just comes as a standard part of the package. Too bad nobody sent that memo to your Expedition's factory brakes. To get your truck excellent braking performance, especially when towing or hauling, you'll need this awesome Expedition brake kit from our friends over at PowerStop. This complete braking system comes with a full set of PowerStop's legendary rotors that are combined with PowerStop's excellent Z36 Extreme truck and towing brake pads that give you the stopping power and greatly reduced fade your Expedition needs when getting thrown around off-road or while towing and hauling all of your gear. Beginning with the front, remove your wheels and you'll have access to the front brakes. The caliper is held to the bracket with 2 bolts, and once they are removed, the caliper can be taken off. A pry bar may be necessary if it is a tight fit. Hang the caliper out of the way so there is no stress on the brake lines. The old pads can be removed from the bracket and set aside. Then remove both bolts that hold the bracket to the knuckle and remove the bracket. The rotor may be held on by surface rust, so take a hammer and knock it loose to remove it. Back on our workbench with the bracket, we pulled the pins and their dust boots to refresh them with the new and included grease and boots. The old grease needs to be wiped off and the new grease applied on the entire pin. Then the new rubber boots can be slid over the pin and the pins reinserted into the bracket. Also on the bracket, new brake pad clips are included, so pop off the old ones and replace them with the new clips. We also applied a bit of grease here on the clips as well. Now place the rotor on the hub. Make sure you have the correct rotor on each side. They are labeled to make it easy. Replace the bracket over the rotor and bolt it back to the knuckle assembly. Then we threaded a lug nut onto one of the studs to hold the rotor in place while we replace the caliper. We must first push the pistons back into the calipers, and the easiest way to do this is with a caliper tool and the old brake pad pushed against the piston. The new pads can now be set in the bracket against the rotor. Place the pad with the humps on the inside of the rotor and the flat edge pad on the outside. Slide the caliper on the bracket over the new pads and tighten it down with the factory hardware. This finishes up the front brakes, so let's put the wheels and tires back on the front of the truck and move on to the rear. We started by unbolting the brake line bracket so the line is not stretched when we remove the caliper. Pop off the dust caps on the back of the caliper to reveal the 2 caliper bolts. Remove both bolts with an Allen head and the caliper will slide off the rotor. Break the rotor loose from the hub and toss aside the old rotor to replace it with the PowerStop rotor. Again, we threaded on a lug nut to keep it in place. On the rear end, the pads clip to the caliper. Take them out of the caliper and compress the piston just as we did with the front brakes. The rear rotors also have a rubber boot that will be replaced with the new parts from PowerStop. They can be tough to slide in, but it can be done. We even use the caliper bolts to assist us here. Now the caliper is ready for the new pads, which only attach to the caliper one way. Once they are in, put the caliper back on the bracket with the brake pad tabs grabbing the bracket like so. We then refreshed the caliper bolts with new grease and bolted the caliper back onto the bracket. Lastly, pop on the new caps to the dust boots and the brake line bracket back on its mount. Remember the proper break-in procedure for the pads and the rotors, and you'll be good to go.